Hello, hello, welcome back. It's Monster Day, the day we make a monster, a creature. And we're heading into the realm of dragons, because why not? I apologise for being a little bit late. It's cold here, and everything that I do is slower as a result. That's my excuse for why I'm a little bit on the late side. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. I suggest grabbing some food, some drink, getting comfortable, and then we'll go straight into it. Get it done as fast as we can, okay? Show you what I'm planning to do. But food and drink, comfortable, and your ideas are flowing, and we'll go from there. How's that sound? All right, cool. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons, but its code name is Shadowdark, because Shadowdark is Dungeons and Dragons. It's just not. That's the brand name, right? That's the name that we're familiar with. And I thought what we would do is we'd have a look at the half dragon. And when I think half dragon, I'm thinking it's got a dragon origin, but it's got 2 legs rather than 4 legs, and it doesn't have wings. That's essentially where my brain is going when I was thinking about this, and that is the intention of what we're going to build today. And hopefully you guys are on board for that idea. I think it's a great idea. We've done a drake. We haven't made any dragons for Shadowdark, but then there are some dragons in the core rulebook for Shadowdark. So I don't know that we necessarily need to start making those, but we'll see. And also they're a little bit more complicated because they go beyond level 10. They tend to be like much higher levels, so that sort of changes the dynamics a lot. I have already prepared some material for you in advance. And the truth of the matter is I've done that pretty much for everything. Like there's a whole bunch of them waiting to go. So I really want to sort of lean into working our way through them as much as possible. But before I go there and start showing you my document, I want to ask that question is, how would you go about making a stat block for the half dragon for Shadowdark? And I'm sure you all have your own opinions and ideas, and let's hear them. You might come up with an idea that I think should be included. You never know. So, hashtag, how would you build the half dragon for Shadowdark? Okay, all right, so that is my question. I'll put that in. It is in the chat. We'll come back to it. But right now we need to go to my document and start working our way through and showing you what I've got, since that's the main reason why you're here, I'm assuming. So here we go. This is it. Starting here. This is my working document that is continuing to grow steadily, week by week, and quite often by more than one monster. But I'm only live streaming one monster creation at a time, for good reason. So what we'll do is let's whip on down past all of this. Now this is in conjunction with AJ Pickett. I've been doing this little project in conjunction with AJ Pickett, and we'll be doing a lot of original stuff. We started that way, and as soon as he's finished his project, we'll move on to doing some more. But we'll go past the lore. Let's get into the stat block. Now I've called it the dragon blood rather than the half dragon, and one of the reasons for that is IP. Like, you know, if you're going to transfer it over, then we've got to give it a slightly different name. It could be called a number of other things other than dragon blood. It really doesn't matter. A humanoid dragon with leathery wings. And I'm probably going to take that out. I'm not a huge fan of including things that have wings. It's sort of dragon, you think, okay, well, it should fly. And this one kind of does fly. So then I had to think about this, because we did a drake not so long. I made a drake. I don't know if I showed you making the drake, but I made a drake. We have dragons. Dragons fly. And then I was thinking, well, it's a humanoid dragon that has wings. Do we need to really worry about removing the fact that they have wings? I had a really hard think about that. And then I was thinking about the dragonborn, the half dragon, and I realized that this is not a playable race monster that we're making here. So we could call it something else, and I'm sure you guys are going to come up with a better name than the Dragon Blood, and I encourage you to do so. And I thought, no, this is something that the Game Master is going to be playing with. Let us give them all the tools that they feel they need. And really what we're doing is we're down-powering this thing, so we're not making it quite as powerful as it was before. And we're looking at how we can make it our own thing. Let's not give it a disadvantage. Let's not make it like the Dragonborn or necessarily exactly like the half-dragon. Let's give it the aspects that we kind of associate with a dragon. So flying, breath weapon. Those things are going to stay. I've already decided that that's going to be that way because this is why it's written this way. This flying reptile breathes fire and worships dragons. So it's not a true dragon. It's not a true dragon. It's definitely an offshoot of dragon kind of some kind. And, that's essentially what we're going with. So we got to start with the power level of our half dragon. And I'll write in here half dragon for now, so you don't get confused, because I know a few of you might. And I usually do that, don't I? Half dragon, and I'll put here blood. And we need to have a alternative name so that IP junkies and Hasbro don't get their nose put out of joint, which of course is possible. So where do I start? This is where I start. I start with what is the power level of our monster. And you can base it off whatever you've got in 5e. So I was looking at AD&D, and I don't really find very much there. And then I was looking around, and I was having a look at 5e and sort of the half dragon, and 5e is like challenge rating 5. And I thought, okay, I can make it monster level 5. And then I was having a look at another book, which is so after looking at 5e's monster manual, and there's nothing really in AD&D as far as I remember, not in the monster manual for AD&D first or second that I could find. And then having a look around, I was checking out basic, and then I looked at 4e, and 4e has this. It doesn't have so much the half dragon in this book, but it does have the Dragonborn. And I was looking at sort of the monster levels for that, and it had 5, 10, 13. And I was trying to make a decision about where I needed to sit. So in the end, my ultimate decision was to make it a little bit more stronger than what the 5e monster was. And that's really abstract. There's nothing more than that I can say. Is I just decided it would be abstract. I wanted them to be chaotic and evil because I want the player characters to feel all right about butchering these things. I didn't feel like it needed to be a monster. I didn't want it to make it a monster that was, I guess, grey in some way. So I've tried to make it very clear, chaotic. It's probably something they're going to have no issues with tormenting or destroying. That's all good with me. Don't mind in the slightest. So then it came down to how do I deal with its various sort of stats and its armor class and all the rest. And the first thing that came to mind is I couldn't sell myself on the idea of putting them in plate armor like they have done in 5e, the half dragons in plate armor. So I've made quite a lot of different changes to this. What I haven't changed necessarily is everything. Like there's some things that I haven't changed that much. So I looked at this and I thought, okay, strength, and I just took the strength modifier from 5e. So I kept the strength modifier at a +3. So it's got a 16, so it's a +3. I looked at its dex, and I was thinking, well, do I really want to make it a highly dexterous creature? It's a humanoid. Should it have a positive in that, or should it just be fairly average? And at this point, I sort of decided I would make it 0. And I actually think maybe that was a mistake on my part. So I'm going to bump it up just a little bit. I'm going to bump it up just a fraction. I'm going to push it up to 1. I'm going to put it back to a +1 for its dex. And then Constitution was a +2, so Constitution +2, which is 14, okay. Intelligence in 5e was a 0, so it's average. And I was thinking, actually, maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense because it is a dragon. And traditionally most dragons are quite smart. And maybe this is not super intelligent, but I feel like it'd be better than average. So I decided to go from the 10 or plus 0 that 5e had and go up by 1. Okay, and then I was thinking about wisdom. Well, if you're going to have intelligence, then wisdom should probably be a little bit better as well. So the 11 or plus 0 and 5e that they had in the stat block, I decided to go up by another 1. And then we got to charisma, and it was average charisma, and I was like, that doesn't seem like dragon. And this is not a full-blown dragon, it's a half dragon. But I feel like their charisma should be better. And, traditionally most dragons are quite good in that area. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right either. So I decided I'm going to push it up to a +2. So +2 it is. Okay, it moves near, so it doesn't fly that fast, but it can fly because we gave it wings. And so that means we need to start looking at things like, if we've got our stats, we've got our monster level, we've got our alignment, we need to start breaking down what all of the attacks, the hit points, armor class should be. And that's what this table here is for. So now that I know what it's a level 6 monster, I then need to go along and decide, right, what is my parameters for this in terms of the armor class that would be suitable for a level 6 monster in Shadowdark. And anything between a 9 and an 18 is considered pretty good. But I don't want to make the armor class of this thing better than the monsters that are dragons, full-blown dragons. Like, that would seem a little bit silly. So I need to be a little bit sensible about how I structure them, right? That's where my head was at. So I was looking through at sort of the armor class you would get for various dragons. Full-blown dragons tend to have a 17, an 18, there's a 16, there's a 17, there's 17, there's 16. And I was like, okay, let's go for kind of middle of the road. And so that's why I selected a 15 for the armor class. So it's got natural armor, and I'm not going to give it plate armor. It doesn't wear plate armor. And one of the reasons why I did that, because initially I had structured as being an 18 for the armor class and having it at the top end for a monster level of a 6. Like, it would be heavily armored, and the reason was because it was wearing plate armor. And you look at the plate armor formula, you're like, okay, take that into consideration. Plate armor is a 15. It's just a flat 15. So even if I put plate armor on, it was going to be like the same. But then I decided if you had wings, you would not wear plate armor. So I decided that rationally, in a narrative way, it did not make sense. So I kept it at a 15. So now I've got to decide, I've got to determine what my hit points are. And the easy way for determining hit points for any kind of monster, if we go to our table here, it shows you hit points. For level 6, it's between 26 and 31, with an average being about 27. But the formula is a D8, which is 4.5, the average. You multiply 4.5 by the monster level, add the constitution modifier once only, not multiple times, and that's what we have as our hit points. So easy peasies, we take that, we take our 4.5, multiply that by 6, we get a grand total of 27. We add the 2 for our con modifier, and we do that once, and we get 29. So hit points are 29. So easy enough to figure out. Next, how many attacks should this thing have? Well, fortunately, Shadowdark points out between 2 and 3 attacks for a level 6 monster. Good. So I decided it needed the top end. Let's go with the top end. So that's what we've done. I've given it 3. So you get either 3 bites or 3 claws, or you can do a fire breath. Now, the bite and the claw do exactly the same amount of damage and have the exact same attack bonus. So what I was going to do is I was going to take that concept and decide, okay, we have 3 options. 3 bites or 3 claws, and probably you could interchange them, whether it be a bite or a claw, but essentially mechanically, they're still identical. I don't think they need to be separated and be different. Honestly, don't think it's really sensible, because then you'll pick and choose the most optimal way to do damage and attack. So don't even go there. Just make them the same, right? But the fire breath is different. That has to be something that, when you do it, it's going to target multiple creatures, and it needs to be something you only get to do once. You don't want to be doing multiples of that. Just one fire breath. That's it on your turn. We don't want to get too crazy and kill everybody multiple times, do we? So that's where my head was at when it came to the attack. So 3 attacks. And now in terms of damage, if you have a look here, it shows you how much your damage output should be for a monster. Between a D6 and a D8. I picked the top end because I felt like this is a dragon. It's a half dragon, not a full dragon. It should be really nasty to deal with. And most dragons have multiple dice. Full-blown dragons get multiple dice. This one doesn't because it's a half dragon, right? So it's kind of half that. So we're still going to go to the top end. That's why I picked the D8 off the table, because that was my choice between a D6 and a D8. Easy enough. Next thing was I had a look at what would be my attack bonus for this monster. Well, anything between a 0 and a 5. I find that the blower end is a really bad idea. I don't think that's sensible for the monster. I think if you're going to do your attack bonus, either make it the same as the monster level or make it 1 point up or 1 point down. And that's where that's the sweet spot. And so we're obviously going to be basing our bite and claw off our strength. So we're only having to add an extra 2 to it, and they don't need to we're not taking proficiency bonuses into consideration. As long as your attack bonus is not lower than your strength or your dexterity modifier, you're probably in the right place. You can go higher, just don't go lower. That makes less sense, okay? Equal to or greater than for that attack bonus. So that's why I've made it a +5, because it's only 1 point lower than level 6. Next, the breath weapon. The breath weapon is actually based very much on the dragons that already exist in Shadowdark. So I went through all their breath weapons, looking at the DCs that they had, so the difficulty class for succeeding or failing, and I decided that because these dragons in Shadowdark are full-blown dragons, and this is not a full-blown dragon, the DC needed to be lower. Most of the time it's a 15. You're having to make a DC 15 dexterity, constitution, whatever check of some kind. And then if you don't succeed, then there's damage that's done. So those are the things that I was focusing on, and I decided were the ones that I would work with. So I decided fills a near-sized cube extending from the dragon blood, whatever you want to call it, DC 12 dexterity, or take 1d6 damage. Now, this is where I drop down to the lower end of the damage output, because my expectation is you're probably going to be able to target roughly between 3 or 4 members with a near-sized cube is like 30 foot by 30 foot. That's quite a big space. That's pretty much the entire party. So if we think in terms of if every attack hits and you're doing 3 attacks, you multiply that 8 if you're doing like a bite or claw, we're going to get roughly 3 times 8. If we get all of them, we get a number that comes out the other end, which if I can get my calculator to work, sorry, okay, here we go. That's not right either. Let's try that again. 3 times 8. Okay, 24. So 24 is sort of the top end damage that we would do if we were biting or clawing. So what would be our likely output if we're doing a D6, and we're probably going to hit maybe 4 members of the party, and I suspect that's what's going to likely happen. 4 times 6, not the 8, gives us 24. It's exactly the same. So mathematically it should work out that you get to choose either the bite or claw and fire breath, but ultimately they're essentially doing the same amount of damage. The only difference is one is an attack and one is a stat check that needs to be performed. So I think that was a nice way of making sure it was that they were in line and one wasn't drastically better than the other. And that's an important thing to consider when you're designing, right? So I did that. I put that in. Now you'll notice that I did not add anything around being immune to fire. But I think that's something that would make sense. If you're going to make it breathe fire, it would make sense that it have fire blood, like that fire immunity, fire immune. So let's just add that in now. Fire blood. And we'll just put here fire immune. Here we go. Just like the fire dragon, we'll give it the same thing. And I think that's your half dragon. It's done. It's got all the tools that it really needs, and it should do exactly what you require it to do. Now, you're probably wondering a little bit about, like, we've covered everything from the attack bonus, the number of attacks, the damage it does, its hit points, its armor class, its DCs, which, as you may have noticed, can sit anywhere between 9 and 18. I picked 12 because I thought it was suitable based off our existing full-blown dragons. And then the lowest stat, -4, highest stat, +5. Now, I have not gone as high or as low as that. We're kind of more in the middle ground with this. And I think that's fine. I don't think we need to get too carried away. That all works out as far as I'm concerned. Mathematically, and that table, by the way, that you can see that I just showed you, is available on Patreon for the free tier, so you don't have to pay anything. If you want the stat blocks that I make in these live streams and the stuff that I make outside of the live streams, then you have to go to the paid tier. But that's how I would go about doing it. Now, let's go to chat very quickly, since I've been talking for about 20 minutes, and see what you guys have been cooking up in here. It'll be interesting to see. Hello, Fred Huber. Fred Huber is a patron and a moderator. Thanks for being here, buddy. Tough skin like leather armor class replaced by armor worn. Yeah, I honestly don't think we should make them able to wear armor. I've kind of explained that already. Speaks draconic language? Absolutely. We don't have to state that sort of thing in the stat block. Do you know what I mean? It's a dragon. It's got keywords that say dragon. And one of the things you'll notice in Shadowdark is its languages. You just go down and you're like, okay, you're looking for who speaks what language. And so dragons, that's draconic. There you go. That's all it would be. That would be a language they would speak. Yep. Matthew. So if that answers your question, Matthew, you don't have to add in the fact that it speaks draconic, because there is a tag in the title and in the description that's a dragon. So you just go straight to the list of languages for Shadowdark, and it gives you exactly what you want. Immunities and advantages against specific attack types, done as advantage based on ancestry. Yeah, we could go with advantage, but if you breathe fire, I think fire immunity is probably more sensible, which is why I've gone with immunity. So I've taken that idea, that's in there, okay? So I thought about that a lot. I thought really hard about whether the half dragon should have wings. And in the end, I decided yes. Now, what is the difference between a full-blown dragon flying and a half dragon flying? Well, you want to know the difference? It's double near. Full-blown dragons move double near, which is like 60 feet fly speed. That's really fast. Half dragons fly half that speed. So I decided in the end to sort of include it. Hello, Tommy LeBlanc. How are you doing? Thanks for the show. Love Shadowdark. I'm glad you do. We're going to do a lot more Shadowdark and a lot more modern D&D for a while. I am going to be doing a little bit of Super Atomic in the future, but that's not ready to publish just yet, so we'll hold off a little bit longer. Will it wield humanoid gear and equipment? Well, it could, but I don't want to build it that way. I want the standard stat block for the half dragon to include a bite and a claw, so that you can kind of use it as a more primitive humanoid rather than a more advanced humanoid. You could add those things in. That's not a problem. You just go through your weapons and you decide which weapon it should have. But I thought it was going to be much more interesting to simply use its natural weapons, which is its claws and its bite, because it has those. So that's what I did, Tommy. Matthew, sorry. It's the son of Smurg. If dragons were like Greek gods cavorting with mortals. Exactly. A bard spawn. What is a bard spawn? I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Okay, so all of the ideas, that you guys have sort of put forward kind of have been included. It may not be exactly the way you think it should be built, but I should have at least shown to you that you can make your own stuff and make conversions without too much difficulty. This is probably much more difficult because there's less to build on. Like there's a lot less out there that you can pull from to make your half dragon. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good or bad in any respects. So Mojo Bob has the half dragon, and here we go. I think the half dragon that they had is not the half dragon that I was thinking of. So I did not base it really in any way off AD&D. For those of you who are like, Fred normally bases all of his stuff off AD&D, and this is one of those times where I haven't done that. Like I didn't really think that it was the right thing to do, so I left it. And let me just show you, because you can see the difference here. This is the half dragon in AD&D off Mojo Bob. And it's only got 1 hit dice, which sort of suggests it would only be a level 1 monster. And I didn't think that was appropriate. And one of the reasons why I decided that was not appropriate is having a near breath in a cube, which I felt like was an important thing for it to have, that does 1d6 damage, even if that's, only 1d6, that's not a level 1 monster. That special ability pushes it up quite a lot more, which is why I decided that I thought that level 6 was probably more suitable. This is one of those times where I've broken the mold. Normally what I would do is I would use an existing monster that has already been made or built for the likes of Shadowdark, and if I'm not doing that already, and I'm and I've got something to base it off, then Shadowdark would be my first. The core rulebook would be my first port of call, and then the next thing I would be going is looking at the likes of 5e and seeing if there's a monster that's been built there that I can sort of help base it off. And then I usually consult AD&D first and second and basic, and then I start looking at 4e. You're probably wondering why I don't mention 3.5, because frankly I'm not particularly fond of 3.5 or version 3, so monsters are just awful to deal with in that version, so that's why I almost never mention them. I'm not saying that 4e is any better, but it gives me an idea of how to strip something down sometimes, particularly if I'm working with very little, and that certainly happened when I was doing this particular monster. So next week I believe that we'll be working on a new monster. I decided I was going to do the Niyogi next week, and then I realized doing the Niyogi, even though I've done a stat block for it already, it's just nobody's seen it, causes a lot of problems for me. So I don't know that would be a smart thing to do. I certainly wanted to do something like the Niyogi, and I thought, no, I will wait. So what I've done is I've decided to do the Etten, the 2-headed giant, because I built that recently and I was quite happy with its structure, and I thought we would cover that because I feel like the Etten is another monster that people will tend to use quite a lot and want to include in their Shadowdark adventures. So that's why I've put it there. Bob Knackles Magic Van. Hello, Bob. How you doing? Fred, do you like Shadowdark as much as Beckme? Okay. I did it. So Bob, I did a video on my impression and experience with Shadowdark, and I don't want this to become a video about that again. So very quickly, overall, I was going to shift away from playing 5e to playing Beckme with my home group. My whole home group, their experience, played for a long time. We discussed it many times. We discussed playing version 4, which nobody wanted to do. Version 3, nobody wanted to go back to. AD&D, nobody really wanted to deal with that because, frankly, only one of us really fully understood it, and only one had really played it, and even they weren't attached to it that much. There were certain things they loved, but other things they didn't. And then we talked about Beckme, and we were all ready to play Beckme D&D, basic D&D, BX D&D. It didn't really matter, and So I learned how to play BackMe D&D from Wally DM, because that was his first version of the game. Mine was AD&D, which I didn't really fully understand. And then we came across this, and when I saw this, I was hopeful. I started making my own version of Dungeons and Dragons, and I stopped making my version of Dungeons and Dragons when I saw this. And my group has become more and more attached to it, and the fact that I've made classes, 10 classes for it, which you'll find down in the description. You'll find a link. You pay what you want to get the 10 classes, 17 ancestries. We play this now because this is modern D&D. Not OSR. This is modern D&D. This is what I consider to be modern BackMe or basic D&D. You know, if 5e had another game running alongside it that was pretty much the same, I feel like it would be this game. It is why I'm really, really interested in continuing to write adventures, run them for my group. AJ Pickett is running a game for us using Shadowdark, and why AJ wanted to make monsters for Shadowdark over 5e. That doesn't mean I don't want to go and fix the 5e stuff or the 2024 stuff, because I do. But I really like this game. It is so easy to make a monster. I can show you how to make a monster every week, and it's a piece of cake. It really is. I give you all the tools you need. So yes, I think I prefer Shadowdark over BackMe D&D. And the reason is there are 3 game mechanics. At its core, 3 game mechanics. The character classes are as simple as basic. Okay? 3 core mechanics, whereas BackMe has kind of 5, you know. Shadowdark has the attack roll, the stat check, and the spellcasting check, but it's roll equal to or greater than. But BackMe has, if you roll an ability check, you have to roll equal to or less than your ability score, and that could have a modifier attached to it. Yeah. And then you've got the likes of a saving throw where you roll equal to or greater than. So now we're going in the other direction, so it flips that way. If you're dealing with the likes of an attack roll, well, we're rolling an attack roll, you add your modifier to it, whatever that might be, to your 20-sided dice, and then you compare it to a table. That's really cumbersome. It's old technology. And then when I think in terms of the likes of turn undead is weird. It's like you roll six-sided dice now. Now we're rolling 6-sided dice, and you're rolling equal to or greater than to succeed on that. Right, so things go back and forth, and then you got percentile dice for the thief's a lot of the thief's abilities. Like now we're rolling percentile dice. That's my biggest issue. I think that was my biggest issue with BackMe. Does that mean that I will not play BackMe D&D? No, that's not going to happen. Mystara is still, in my opinion, the best setting of all time. And I think Glenn, or should I say Mr. Welsh, would agree with you. So I'm going to get out of here because I've gone on long enough. We've made the half dragon. We're going to come back next week. We're going to do another drowned monster. I've got plenty to do. So good news. It's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. And that means that we're going to get more and more added to the repertoire, which I think is... But more importantly, I can show you how easy it is for you to make your own. That's really important to me as well. So, yeah, we're going to get out of here. I'm going to end this poll. And I've got 8 votes, which is nice. Do you like Shadowdark RPG? Yes, 75%. I'm not really surprised if you showed up to this live stream. Undecided, 25%. That I do understand. No and just watching, nobody voted for those. Okay. All right, thanks, Bob. Thank you very much. And Derp, also a patron and a moderator. Thanks for being here. I want to thank everybody who's watching and listening, everybody who took part in that poll, everybody in the chat. So Bob, Matthew, Derp, and particularly Fred Huber, and Tommy as well. Thank you very much. And I want to thank all of my patrons who support me on Patreon. If I have not called you out and you are a patron, I think Tommy was at some point. I can't remember if Matthew was. I haven't checked it for a while. I've been working too hard. Anyway, but thank you for to all my patrons. I really do appreciate it. Without you, I probably wouldn't be doing this anymore. It would have stopped, and I would have just fully retired. So thank you so much. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.